The thing Mason Calder saw in the creek was not a body. It was worse than that. It was a sack. A rough feed sack, tied tight with rope, floating slow in the dark water like someone had dropped trash and never looked back. Mason would have ridden past it like he did every other piece of driftwood if the sack had not moved. Not from the current, from the inside. Then a tiny hand slipped out through the wet burlap, reached toward the morning light, and a voice no louder than a breath broke the quiet. "Mama." Mason froze so hard his horse stopped with him. The hills of central Texas were just waking up, the sun climbing over mesquite and scrub, painting the ranch land gold. Mason had been out since dawn, doing what he always did, riding fence, fixing wire, keeping busy so the past could not catch him. He was 45 and felt older than that, like time had sanded him down into something rough and silent. 10 years ago, a fire took his wife, Sarah, and their infant boy. The flames did not just burn a house, they burned the soft parts of him too. Since then, Mason had lived like a man walking with a heavy coat in summer, carrying grief where no one could see it. He worked at the Cross Spur Ranch, a spread of prairie and creek beds outside the little town of Cedar Ridge. The other hands respected him. They also kept their distance. Mason was the kind of man who helped without being asked, but never stayed to talk after. That morning, he rode his old gelding Buck along the waterline of Juniper Creek, checking for a break where last week's storm had pushed branches into the fence. The creek ran lazy and brown, edged by tall grass and cottonwoods. It was the kind of place where you could hear your own thoughts too clearly. When he saw the sack drifting near the bank, he muttered to himself about folks dumping things upstream again. He swung down from the saddle, boots sinking into mud, and waded in. The water was cold enough to sting. The sack felt heavier than it should, like it held soaked grain. Mason lifted it, the rope cutting into his palm. That was when he heard the sound again, a thin whimper, the kind of sound that does not belong in a creek. The kind that turns a man's stomach before his mind catches up. His fingers shook as he worked the knot loose. Inside was a baby girl. Her hair was pale and matted to her head. Her lips were bluish. Her skin felt wrong, too cold for something meant to be alive. Her eyes were half open, unfocused, but they found his face as if by instinct. And then she whispered it again, like a prayer she had nowhere else to send. "Mama." Mason's chest tightened so hard he could not breathe. For one awful second he was back in that burning house, back in smoke and heat, and a tiny cry that had ended too soon. His mind wanted to shut down like it always did when pain came near. But the weight in his arms was real. The cold little body was real. The shallow breath was real. This time he was not too late. "No," he said, the word rough and broken. "No, you hold on." He pulled off his heavy ranch coat, wrapped her tight, and pressed her against his chest. He could feel how little life she had left. He could also feel her small fingers catch at his shirt like she knew he was the only thing between her and the dark. Mason stumbled out of the creek, splashing and slipping, then shoved himself into the saddle with the baby held tight in one arm. "Go," he told Buck, and the horse took off like he understood. The ride to Cedar Ridge was not far, but it felt endless. Mason leaned low, shielding the baby from the wind. He rubbed her back with his thumb, trying to give her warmth, trying to give her more time. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Just stay with me." She made a soft sound, not quite a cry, and her eyelids fluttered. Her face was too still, too quiet. Fear rose in him like a flood. Mason had never been a praying man. Not since the fire. But on that road, with the baby's breath fading against his chest, he found himself talking to God like a desperate stranger. Please, not again. As Cedar Ridge came into view, people in town were starting their day. A wagon rolled past. A man swept his porch. A woman carried a basket toward the bakery. They all turned when they saw Mason galloping down Main Street, like a man chasing a miracle. He did not slow. The doctor's office sat near the church. A small white building with a red sign over the door. Mason swung down before the horse fully stopped and nearly ran inside, boots thudding on the wooden floor. Dr. Everett Hale looked up from his desk, startled, coffee still in his hand. "Mason?" he started, but the words died when he saw the bundle. Mason laid the baby down on the exam table like she was made of glass. "Found her in Juniper Creek," Mason said, voice shaking. "In a sack. She's freezing. She's barely breathing." "You gotta help her." The doctor's face hardened into focus. He moved fast, pulling blankets from a cabinet, lighting the small stove, reaching for his tools. "Get me warm water," Dr. Hale snapped. "Now!" Mason ran without thinking, grabbing a kettle, stumbling toward the back room. His hands felt too big, too clumsy. He was a ranch hand, not a man who knew how to save babies. He came back to see Dr. Hale rubbing the child's arms, checking her tiny heartbeat, wrapping her in layers. "She's alive," the doctor said, but his tone carried warning. "Barely. How long was she in that water?" Mason's jaw clenched. Long enough for someone to think she'd be gone by now. The doctor looked at him sharply. "Someone did this on purpose." Mason stared down at the baby's face. Her cheeks were pale, her mouth trembling, and yet she was still here, still fighting. A sound escaped Mason's throat, half anger, half grief. "What kind of person does that?" he said. Before the doctor could answer, the front door creaked open. A woman stepped in, drawn by the commotion. Her name was Claire Benton, the schoolteacher. She was in her mid-30s, quiet, with tired eyes that looked like they had learned how to survive without hope. Folks in Cedar Ridge said she had been different once, before her husband died in a mine collapse, before she lost her baby girl to fever not long after. Claire took one look at the table and went still. "What happened?" she whispered. Dr. Hale didn't stop working. "This child needs care," he said. "Constant care. I can warm her and treat her, but I can't watch her every minute. Claire, I need you." Claire's hand went to her throat, like she was trying to hold her heart in place. "I can't," she said, but the words sounded weak, like she did not believe them. The baby shifted, a soft sound leaving her lips. Her eyes cracked open again. She turned her face toward Claire, as if she could sense something gentle in her. And the baby reached out. Not far, just enough to ask. Claire stepped closer without meaning to. Mason watched her, confused by the way the room changed when she moved nearer. Like the air softened, like the baby's fear eased. Dr. Hale carefully lifted the child and placed her into Claire's arms. Claire stiffened at first, like holding that tiny weight might break her. Then the baby's fingers curled around Claire's thumb, and something in Claire's face cracked open. The baby made a small, tired sigh and settled against her, calmer than she had been since Mason pulled her from the water. Mason swallowed hard. "She knows you," he said quietly. Claire's eyes filled, but she did not wipe the tears away. She looked down at the baby like she was seeing a second chance she never asked for. Dr. Hale exhaled. "She's going to live," he said, not as a promise, but as a fight he was willing to take on. But whoever did this might come looking. People who throw away a baby don't do it unless they're scared of something. Mason's hands curled into fists at his sides. Outside, the town carried on like normal. But inside that small doctor's office, something had shifted. A baby had been left to die, and two broken souls had just been pulled into the same storm. And neither of them yet understood the truth, waiting upstream. Because the sack was not just an act of cruelty, it was a cover-up, and it was tied to the most powerful name in Cedar Ridge. By the second night, the whole town of Cedar Ridge knew there was a baby girl in Dr. Hale's office. Some people called it a miracle. Others called it trouble. Mason Calder did not call it anything at all. He just sat in the hard chair by the wall, hat in his hands, watching the tiny bundle in the crib Dr. Hale had set up near the stove. The baby's skin had gained a little color, and her breathing was steadier now, but she still looked too small for how close she had come to dying. Claire Benton sat beside the crib on a stool, her hands folded tight in her lap, as if she did not trust them. Every time the baby made a sound, Claire leaned forward like a guard dog, gentle but fierce. Dr. Hale moved between patients that day, his face drawn with worry. He did what he could, but even he could not be in two places at once. "You both need to hear me clear," he told them late that evening, when the clinic finally quieted. "She needs warmth and watching, feeding every few hours. If she spikes a fever or starts coughing, she could turn quick." Quote. Mason nodded like a man taking orders on a cattle drive. "Tell me what to do." Dr. Hale looked at him, then at Claire. "You can't do this alone, not either of you." Claire's throat worked like she was swallowing something sharp. "I can help," she said softly, then looked down at the baby as if the words scared her. Mason's eyes shifted to Claire. He had known her in passing for years. The quiet teacher who kept her curtains drawn and her grief close. He had never seen her hold anything like this, like she might not let go even if you begged. The baby stirred and made a faint sound, then turned her face toward Claire's chest. Claire lifted her carefully, awkward at first, then more sure when the baby settled. The child's tiny fingers grabbed a piece of Claire's collar and held on. Mason felt his throat tighten again. That grip was not an accident. That was need. Dr. Hale handed Claire a bottle. "Hold it like this. Let her take her time." Claire did what he said. Her eyes stayed locked on the baby's face, like she was afraid if she blinked, the child would vanish. The baby drank slow, then paused, and her eyes wandered until they found Mason. For a moment she just stared at him, quiet and strange, as if she remembered the creek and the coat and the ride. Then she reached one hand out toward him. Mason flinched like the gesture hit him. He had not held a baby since the fire, not since his own son's last day. His hands were built for rope and nails and iron tools, not soft skin and fragile bones. Claire watched him. "She wants you," she whispered, as if that was impossible. Mason stepped closer. He did not touch the baby, not yet. He just let her tiny fingers wrap around the edge of his sleeve. A soft sound came out of her mouth. Not a full word this time, but close enough to cut him open. Mason swallowed hard and looked away, ashamed that his eyes were burning. "She's looking for her mama," he said. Claire's voice trembled. "Maybe she's just looking for someone." They took her to Claire's small house behind the schoolhouse that night because Dr. Hale said the baby needed quiet, steady warmth, and the clinic was too busy. Mason followed on foot, holding a basket of supplies the doctor packed. Bottles, blankets, medicine, and a note with instructions written in neat, firm handwriting. Inside Claire's home, everything was simple and clean. One lamp, one worn sofa, a small kitchen table with a single chair pulled close. It looked like the home of someone who had stopped expecting company a long time ago. Claire cleared a space near the stove and laid a quilt down. Mason stood in the doorway, awkward, too big for the room, like a storm cloud that had wandered inside by mistake. "You don't have to stay," Claire said, but her eyes did not match her words. Mason stared at the baby, who was finally sleeping with her mouth slightly open. "I'm not leaving her," he said, "not after what I found." Claire nodded once, tight and grateful. That night was long. The kind of long that stretches time into thin pieces. The baby woke crying twice, the sharp, panicked cry of a child who remembered cold water and darkness. Claire lifted her fast, rocking back and forth until the baby's sobs softened. Mason sat nearby, his hands clasped, listening. "Does she have a name?" Claire asked quietly, rocking the baby. Mason shook his head. "Not that I know." Claire's eyes went distant, and Mason recognized that look. It was the look of someone seeing an old wound. "I had a daughter," Claire said after a long pause. "Her name was Lily." Mason's chest tightened. He did not speak because he knew if he did, he might not stop. "She died when she was 6 months old," Claire continued, voice steady but thin. "Fever took her so fast I didn't even understand it until she was gone. After that, I told myself I would never hold another baby again. It hurt too much." Mason looked at the child in Claire's arms. "And now you are." Claire gave a small, bitter laugh. "And now I am." Silence sat between them. Then Mason said the truth he had never said out loud to anyone in town. "I lost my wife. and my boy in a fire. 10 years back. I still smell the smoke sometimes, even when there isn't any." Claire's rocking slowed. Her eyes lifted to his, and for the first time, Mason felt like someone truly saw him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Mason nodded once. That was all he could manage. On the third day, the baby started to change. She cried less. She watched more. She drank her bottle stronger. She even made a small sound that almost seemed like a laugh when Mason clumsily bounced her on his knee. Mason did not know how it happened, but by sunset, he could change a diaper without cursing, and he could warm formula on the stove without burning it. Claire teased him once, the smallest tease, when he held the bottle wrong and the baby sputtered. "Easy," Claire said, adjusting his hand. "You're feeding a baby, not a calf." Mason gave a quiet grunt. "Feels about as risky." For the first time, Claire smiled in a real way, and Mason felt something shift in his chest, something he had kept locked away. They started calling the baby Sonny, because Hale said she needed a name for the records, and because every time the morning light hit her face, she blinked like she was learning the world was not all dark. Claire said the name softly the first time, and the baby turned her head like she recognized it. Sonny. That small turn felt like hope. Then Sheriff Colton Briggs came to the schoolhouse after dark, hat in his hands, his face serious. Mason knew the sheriff well enough to know that look meant trouble. "You got a minute," Briggs said. Mason stepped outside with him. The night air was cold and still, the kind that carried sound far. Briggs lowered his voice. "Someone's been asking questions about a missing baby." Mason's blood ran cold. "Who?" Briggs hesitated, then said the name like it tasted bitter. "Mayor Harlan Crow's office." Mason stared at him. "The mayor?" Briggs nodded. "His assistant came by today, said it was a private family matter. Said folks should keep quiet if they knew what was good for them. And Mason, there's more. They're offering a reward. A big one." Mason's jaw tightened. "So they throw her away and now they want her back." Briggs looked at him hard. "That's what it feels like." From inside the house, the baby cried out, sharp and scared, like she could sense the storm at the door. Claire's voice followed, soothing, humming a lullaby that sounded older than both of them. Mason turned toward the sound, and his eyes went dark with something steady. "She's not going anywhere," he said. Briggs exhaled slowly. "You better be careful, Mason. Crow doesn't lose." "Not in this town." Mason watched the shadow of the schoolhouse window, where warm light spilled out, where Claire moved back and forth with the baby in her arms. He thought about the sack tied tight, about cold water, about a voice whispering mama. He thought about the kind of power it took to make a baby disappear. And he knew, deep down, that saving her life was only the beginning. Because now the people who tried to erase her were coming to claim their mistake. And they would not come gently. The next morning, Cedar Ridge felt different. It still smelled like coffee and dust, and wagons still rolled down Main Street, but people watched each other longer than usual. When Mayor Harlan Crow's name was spoken, voices dropped low. When Mason Calder walked past the feed store, conversation stopped like someone cut a rope. Mason did not care. All he cared about was the baby sleeping in Claire Benton's arms, warm and safe for the first time in her short life. Sheriff Colton Briggs came again before noon. He stood on Claire's porch looking like a man carrying bad news he wished he could bury. "They filed papers," he said. "Mayor Crow wants custody. Says the child is family. Says she was taken." Mason's hands tightened around the porch rail. "Taken from who?" "The creek." Briggs sighed. "He's got a lawyer from Austin coming in. Judge Talbot set the hearing for 3 days from now." Claire stepped into the doorway, Sonny tucked against her shoulder. The baby was calm until she saw the sheriff's face. Then she clung tighter to Claire's blouse. "She knows," Claire whispered. Mason looked at Sonny and felt anger rise like fire. "What do we do?" Briggs glanced toward the street, then leaned in. "You fight. You get Tom Renshaw to represent you. He's not fancy, but he's honest. And Mason, you need to hear this. Crow is scared. Not of losing the baby, of being exposed." Claire's eyes narrowed. Exposed for what? Briggs hesitated. I don't know yet, but I got a feeling this baby is tied to something the mayor would burn down the town to keep hidden. After the sheriff left, Mason and Claire sat at the kitchen table while Sunny played with a wooden spoon. She banged it on the table like it was a drum, proud and loud, like she owned the world. Claire watched her with a soft face, then suddenly pressed a hand to her mouth. Mason leaned forward. What is it? Claire's voice came out thin. I was her teacher, the mayor's daughter. Mason held still. Who? Claire swallowed. Hannah Crow. The name hit the room like thunder. Hannah Crow was 19. Pretty, polished, and always dressed like she was headed to church even on a Tuesday. 6 months ago, she had been sent away to study back east, quoting to the mayor. Folks had talked about it for a week, then moved on. Mason stared. You think Sunny belongs to her? Claire nodded slowly. I do. The timing fits. The age fits. And the way the mayor is acting fits. This is not about family love. This is about reputation. That afternoon, a woman named Rosa Alvarez slipped into the schoolhouse like a shadow. Rosa worked at the Crow House. She cleaned their floors, washed their linens, and carried their secrets like stones in her apron. Most people in town barely noticed her. That was why she knew so much. She found Claire alone, and her hands trembled so badly she could not hold them still. I cannot keep it inside anymore, Rosa whispered. Claire's face went pale. Rosa, what do you know? Rosa's eyes filled. That baby, she is Miss Hannah's baby. Mason stepped forward from the corner, his voice low. Say it plain. Rosa wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. Miss Hannah got pregnant. A man promised her marriage, then disappeared. When the mayor found out, he got so angry he scared us all. He sent Miss Hannah away. He told everyone she was studying. He told her the baby died. Claire's throat tightened. He told her Sunny died. Rosa nodded, but the baby lived. Dr. Hale helped at the birth, but the mayor made him swear silence. Then the mayor paid a man to get rid of the baby. I heard it. I heard the mayor say it was better for the child to disappear than to shame the family forever. Mason felt sick, so they put her in that sack. Rosa nodded again, sobbing now. Yes, and now the mayor is afraid someone will connect the baby to Miss Hannah. He wants her back, so he can hide her better. Claire looked down at Sunny, who was now chewing on the spoon with a happy little hum. Claire's arms tightened around her like a shield. They are not taking her, Claire said, voice steady. Mason's eyes went hard. Over my dead body. 3 days later, the courthouse was packed. Cedar Ridge had not seen a crowd like that since the last cattle drive parade. Men filled the benches. Women leaned in the doorways. Even ranch hands who never cared about law sat quiet, because everyone understood what this was really about. Power against love. Mayor Harlan Crow sat at the front in a dark suit that probably cost more than Mason made in months. Beside him was his lawyer, a short man with slick hair and a smile that did not reach his eyes. And beside them sat Hannah Crow. She looked nothing like the town remembered. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes red, her hands twisting together like she was trying to tear her own fear apart. Across the aisle, Mason and Claire sat with Tom Renshaw, the local attorney with a worn briefcase and honest eyes. Sunny sat in Claire's arms with a small ribbon tied in her hair. Mason had carved her a tiny wooden horse, and she held it tight like it mattered. Judge Talbot banged his gavel. This is a custody hearing. We will have order. The mayor's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, this child is the biological daughter of Miss Hannah Crow. The Crow family has the means to provide a proper home, education, and future. These two individuals are strangers. They have no legal claim. Judge Talbot looked down. And how did the child come to be found in Juniper Creek, tied in a sack? The lawyer's smile twitched. A misunderstanding, Your Honor. The family believed the child had been lost. When they learned she was alive, they moved to recover her. Mason's hands curled into fists, but Tom Renshaw touched his sleeve, steadying him. Tom stood. Your Honor, my clients found this baby abandoned and near death. They saved her. They have fed her, warmed her, and protected her. This child knows them as her parents. As if to prove it, Sunny looked up at Claire and said clear as daylight, "Mama," the courtroom murmured. Hannah's breath caught like she had been stabbed. Then Sunny turned her head toward Mason and patted his cheek with her little hand. "Pa," she babbled, close enough to break him. Judge Talbot watched carefully. Hannah Crowe was called to the stand. She stood slowly, eyes down. When she spoke, her voice was small. "She is my baby. I named her June, after my grandmother." Her lawyer asked softly, "Did you abandon her?" Quote. Hannah's face crumpled. "No. I thought she died. My father told me she died. I grieved her. I begged to see her. He told me there was nothing left to see." The courtroom went dead quiet. Tom Renshaw stood for questions. "Miss Crowe, when you saw the child at Dr. Hale's office, did she reach for you?" Hannah swallowed. "No." "What did she do?" Hannah's tears fell. She cried. She clung to Claire. She called her mama. A low sound moved through the crowd. Not gossip, sympathy. Then Mason took the stand. He spoke in plain words, the only kind he knew. "Your Honor, I'm not rich. I'm not important. But I know what that baby looked like in that sack. She was dying. Somebody wanted her gone. Claire and me, we brought her back. We did what anybody with a soul would do." The mayor's lawyer stood. "Mr. Calder, you have no papers showing you have any right to this child." Mason nodded. "That's true." The lawyer leaned in. "So you admit she belongs to the Crowe family?" Mason's eyes sharpened. "She belongs to whoever will keep her safe." Claire took the stand last. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. "I lost a baby once. I promised myself I would never love another child because I could not survive losing one again. Then Sunny came into my arms and called me Mama, and something inside me came back to life. I did not plan it. I did not ask for it. But she is bonded to us. She trusts us. She sleeps in peace because she knows we will come when she cries." Then Claire turned and faced the mayor. "And I know why you want her back," Claire said. Mayor Crowe stiffened. "Watch your mouth." Claire did not blink. "You did not want your daughter shamed. So you tried to erase the baby. You told Hannah her child was dead. You paid someone to throw her into Juniper Creek. Rosa Alvarez heard you." A wave of shock moved through the room. Hannah gasped. Her head snapped toward her father. "Is that true?" Mayor Crowe stood up, furious. "This is a lie." Judge Talbot banged the gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Crowe." Hannah's voice cracked. "Father, answer me." The mayor's face went cold. "I did what I had to do." Hannah's knees nearly buckled. She grabbed the rail to keep herself standing. "You killed my baby." "No," Claire said, holding Sunny tighter. "He tried." Judge Talbot's eyes were hard now. He leaned forward. "Sheriff Briggs, step forward." Briggs stood and took off his hat. "Your Honor, I have a statement from Rosa Alvarez and evidence of a paid man leaving town that same week. I also have Dr. Hale's record notes showing the baby was delivered alive." The mayor's lawyer sat down slowly, like the ground had shifted under him. Judge Talbot stared at Mayor Crowe. "This court will not reward cruelty and corruption." The mayor's mouth opened, but no words came. Judge Talbot looked at Sunny, then at Claire and Mason. "The law favors blood, but the law also demands the best interest of the child. This child was abandoned with intent to die. Mason Calder and Claire Benton saved her life and have provided stable care. The court grants custody to Mason Calder and Claire Benton." For a moment, nobody moved. Then the room broke apart in whispers and tears. Claire covered her mouth, sobbing into Sunny's hair. Mason stood frozen like he did not trust the sound of victory. Hannah stepped away from her father and walked slowly toward Claire. "May I?" she whispered, eyes pleading. "May I say goodbye, or hello, I do not even know which." Claire hesitated, then lowered Sunny just enough. Sunny looked at Hannah with curious blue eyes, then reached out and touched Hannah's cheek like she was studying her face. Hannah choked on a sob. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Mason's voice was rough but not cruel. "You were lied to." Hannah nodded, tears falling. She turned and looked at her father like she was seeing him for the first time. I'm done being afraid of you." Mayor Crow's eyes flashed, but he had no power left in that room. Outside the courthouse, the sun was bright and clean, and the air felt lighter than it had in weeks. That evening, back at Claire's house, Sonny toddled across the floor on unsteady legs and fell into Mason's boots with a giggle. Mason lifted her up, and she pressed her forehead to his like she belonged there. Claire watched them, her eyes soft and tired and full. "We should tell her the truth one day," Claire said quietly. Mason nodded. "All of it. But we also tell her this. She was chosen." Claire smiled through tears. Yes, she was chosen. Sonny patted Mason's face and babbled, happy and safe. And for the first time in 10 years, Mason Calder believed something he had not dared to believe since the fire. That love could win. Not because it was loud, not because it was powerful, but because it stayed.